DevelopSec, Developing Security Awareness with James Jardine, brought to you by Jardine Software. Hi, and welcome to episode 15 of the DevelopSec podcast. I am your host, James Jardine, and today I thought we'd talk a little bit about security testing. Every company, every application, or I should say most applications, have some form of testing procedures that they go through, whether it's the developers doing unit testing and, just testing to make sure that the functionality they're creating actually works as they expect it to QA, where they're going in, making sure that logic works as it's supposed to. The application says, hey, if I put in 5 in this field and 7 in this field, I get 12 in this field. As a simple example, we have testing in place, and the varying degree of testing that goes on, changes drastically between companies. Some places the QA testing is as little as we've got some Excel spreadsheets that walk us through, this is what I expect. Start here at the login page, enter these credentials, click the login button, you should be directed to this page, right? And that's a simple example of one of the type of scripts that you would see for some of the QA that goes on out there. Now, of course, a lot of this stuff can actually be automated. You can use Selenium. You can use tools like LoadRunner if you want a commercial product, where you can script these out and you'll walk through it. Hey, click here, do this, do that. I should expect this page. And we can script that out and do some really good testing there. The problem is we're not seeing people incorporate the idea of security testing into the mix. And don't get me wrong, security testing is no different than the normal QA that we're doing. I know we give it a different name. I'm not going to get on my rant about how, because I find cross-site scripting flaws versus, the page doesn't redirect properly flaws. Now all of a sudden, I'm researching. You're finding bugs. You're quality assurance. You're a tester. And so it doesn't matter what type of bug you're finding, right? We're not in here trying to find something that's brand new. It's, hey, you've programmed an application. Where might you have gone wrong in your implementation in your code? Whether that's missing input validation, missing output encoding, right? Whether you're missing authorization checks or you're not checking properly to make sure that when we redirect a page that we only redirect to the pages we want to redirect to. There's lots of things that we test for, but they're really no different than the things that we test for every day. I mean, think about it as a QA department. I'm testing inputs, right? But we're not thinking about testing things that aren't on our script. We're not thinking about looking at items that exist someplace else. For example, the URL. I've sat with plenty of QA testers that, had no even thought of manipulating values they see on a query string. Right? That's just not, and again, this depends on what QA group you're with, what company you're with. Some QA groups are much more technical than others, but the ones that I've seen are usually of the less technical nature and more of the, yes, I can follow these steps. So why not click or change values that are in the URL? That's what the attackers are doing, right? That's how I'm finding that I can access Johnny's account, because you put the account number in the URL and I just went up and changed it from a 5 to a 6. Simple things like that, QA should be able to test. Developers should be able to test that. Granted, development environment may not have enough data to where maybe it's more difficult to test that, whereas QA is testing in a either QA environment or a UAT environment, something like that, where we don't have production data, but we have a larger data set that hopefully has been scrubbed if it came from production, so it doesn't have any sensitive information in it. But we've got a little bit more. We've got multiple companies, multiple customers, however our application works, to be able to check things like, hey, can me logged in as company A access data from company B. And, I've always gone under the impression QA should know the app almost better than the developers. QA has to understand, what does the application do? What are the feature sets? How do those features work? How do they work in these conditions? Because I want to make sure that these are the conditions we want to make an application that's going to be solid. So QA should understand, okay, well, user A shouldn't be able to access data from user B. Now, don't get me wrong, developers should understand this too, and this should be part of their design to make sure that this can't happen, that we have authorization checks. But there's no reason why QA shouldn't understand that as well and look for how that type of testing is done and checking for it. A lot of the testing that happens for this is very simple. Like I said, going up and changing a parameter that you see because it says company ID in the URL will change the company ID, right? If there's an ID flag in the URL, as a QA tester, I should be thinking about, okay, well, and maybe you note the values already. I think I'm user ID 5. What happens if I change it to edit user ID 6? Can I go in and edit that user when I'm a user that doesn't have privileges to do that? And if I can, well, then we failed our testing. So we need to start working on how do we start getting these security tests brought into the QA world. Because once we start figuring out some of these, there's no reason why we can't use our automated scripting technologies like Selenium, like LoadRunner, to be able to add these type of tests as well. I can easily go in there and tell it, hey, go to this page. All right, now add some script, change the URL. Now I'm logged in as John. Let me see if I can see Kevin's account. And if that page pulls back, then we got a problem. If we get an unauthorized or whatever error you're expecting to see come back, well, then we're passing that test. Now, we got to be cautious because if we, I hate to say we've seen it before, but sometimes developers might want to pass a test so they'll know what values you're using and, I see a 6, let me just return this value automatically. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we're trying to do better at testing our applications. Because remember that, take the word security out of it. My application is supposed to run in a certain way. And we classify certain bugs as security bugs, but really, it's still a bug. The system is acting in a way that the developer and the designers didn't design for. So even cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, right? These type of flaws, while we consider them security flaws, it's only because what they lead to. The key is, it's still acting in a way that the site wasn't designed to run it. I didn't design my site to let somebody else run JavaScript on my page. I didn't design my site to allow other people to run submit my requests without me knowing it. And so if you take out the idea of security context to it, we're still testing the same thing we've been testing for as long as we've been doing QA testing within the applications. We're saying, how should the application work? The problem is now we're thinking about other ways that the system could be used. I remember when I first started development, I created this web, or actually it was a Windows form at the time, and it asked for an age input. So I took an age, had a text box, took the value, and the instructor comes over, puts a name in the age field or some string in the age field. And my first response was, well, why would you do that? It says age. Obviously, it wants a number, and it wants it in digits, right? I don't understand why we're going through this process of you writing something. It says age, right? Just like it says phone number or social security number. Put your phone number in there, right? Developers think in that way, and we need to stop thinking that way and start thinking that, you know what? There are people out there that want to screw with your stuff. So if it's an age field or you're expecting a number, make sure that it's a number, and we can do that. Things we need to do that, right? We need to train developers and QA a little bit better on getting them aware of this is real. People are going to be attacking our sites. They're going to be messing with our stuff. As you can see, it's already turning into a money-making machine by, hey, look, I mean, I deserve money if I find bugs in your site that you didn't give me permission to test. There's lots of reasons why people are going to start doing this stuff. There's no reason why we can't do this stuff internally and start looking at that. So we need to start changing our mindset from both developers and QA of how could I change stuff in this application? What are my vectors for changing data? And what do we expect? The second thing we need to think about is we really have to understand our application. We have to know what fields should be expecting. Like if that's a number field, I need to make sure that it only accepts numbers. If it's a date field, make sure that it's only allowing me to put a valid date in there. If there's ranges attached to that, check those ranges. I mean, when we're doing QA testing, we check bounds, or we should be, right? Hey, what's the upper bound? What's the lower bound? I'm going to check a value on each side and make sure that the application is behaving in the way it should be. It's the same thing here. Look, if my field says age and I'm expecting an int, then let me ensure that if I try to put any other character besides digits in there, the application fails, right? It returns back some error message or a response that lets the user know, hey, this input is not valid. You need to change it. Make sure that it's that date field. Freeform text, a little bit harder, right? But we can still go in there and do a lot of stuff to freeform text. Limit it by its length. Limit the type of characters that you're allowing in there. Unfortunately, to limit the type of characters, we have to understand our app to know what type of characters we allow. But these are things that we want to start thinking about within the QA world and the developer world, because developers need to be doing this too when they're writing their tests. There's no reason why you can't have unit tests that test your application for some of these vulnerabilities that we're seeing, these bugs. There's no reason for us to keep thinking of this as a separate task, a separate group. Oh, we got to have the security team do this, or oh, we got to have the security team do the code review. We're not good enough to know what we're doing. Look, I'll give you the secret sauce. And I wrote this on my Facebook page the other day. The secret sauce to security testing. Find where you can manipulate the data, analyze the output. That's it. I mean, there is nothing special going on with what we're doing. And I can't tell you how many times I've been on site testing with people and, they're like, oh man, how did you do that? And you're like, I put in a single quote, or I put in something real simple, or you happen to have a share that had this information already in it there for me. Most of the stuff that we're doing is not real difficult. Now, I say most of the stuff. Okay, the people that are writing bypasses to get past UAC and some of the, integrated security features that are embedded into our operating system and into the browsers themselves, where they're doing buffer overflows, they're doing this and that. All right, some of that stuff gets pretty complex. Much respect to anybody that can do that. If you're doing shell coding like that, then that stuff's much more difficult. And I don't expect to see QA doing that, but let me tell you something. You look at the OWASP top 10, there's not too much on there that I see that a regular QA person couldn't figure out how to do. There's no reason we can't be testing for that stuff in QA. Our developers can't be thinking about that stuff as we're going through and testing it as well. That stuff is not hard. Cross-site scripting, SQL injection, right? Authorization issues, authentication issues, all these issues, they're not that difficult. And when we come across things that do get a little bit more difficult, well, use tools, right? I mean, as a tester, I use Burp Suite for just about everything that I do. And there may be some other tools that I use as well. But, if you're not directly, in the, I really understand intercepting stuff and I'm still starting to learn and all that stuff. And even if you're good at it, I recommend as an internal company, get a tool besides your manual tools, right? Like if you're doing QA testing and you're not using Burp or Fiddler or some Zap proxy or some other interception proxy to help with your testing, I think you're failing already, right? You need to have that ability to be able to inspect the traffic, look and see what's going on so you can really understand how the app's working. But, get some extra automated tools that are going to help with you, right? Look at some of these things, if you want source code review, stuff like that, right? I mean, Fortify has tools, Veracode has tools that'll actually come in here and analyze your source code looking for a lot of this stuff. Now, granted, right? I mean, keep in mind, they don't find everything, but they're going to find a lot. And the more you can find, the better off you're going to be. And then maybe it'll be actually worth the $500 or the $1,000 or the $1,500 that you pay somebody that, happen to find a cross-site scripting flaw on your site that the tool didn't pick up. But you're going to drastically decrease your surface area when you start running some of these tools. They've got dynamic scanners that are going out there and running against the site while it's running. Veracode, White Hat, there's a bunch of them do that. Secure Ideas has a scout service now where we actually go out and we actually have people that go in and periodically on a recurring basis and assess the application to see what's going on. And so, employ something like this, use some of these tools that are out there. Of course, some of the tools are fairly expensive. So depending on your budget, you have to see what you can do. But there's a lot of free stuff out there. There's a lot of cheap stuff out there that you can start learning how to do this stuff yourselves, and then using tools on top of that, right? You've now drastically increased the power of your QA and development environments to help find a lot of this stuff. Now, crowdsourcing, I've mentioned this idea, right? That, we've got people out there just banging away on sites like, hey, it's a public site. I can hack it if I want to, whatever. I'm not a fan of that, but, the idea of having legit sites like HackerOne or something like that, where it's a crowdsourced, hey, we're going to try to do this the legit way. We're going to work with setting up and, hey, here's the rules of engagement that we can do. And right, like all the people that are signed up on our site, they're going to follow these rules. And, we're going to try to do this the right way, right? It's organized testing versus Joe Schmo just saying, you know what? Oh yeah, look at this site. Let me go ahead and see if I can hack it. And if I find anything, they can either pay me or like extort them to pay me by saying I'll release it to the public because you didn't want to fix it. Going with sites that are actually legit and going for the idea that, hey, we're here to help test your sites. We know you're not doing it internally very well, at least from a security perspective. We've got people that'll just bang away on it, whatever. All right, that's fine. The ability to use crowdsourcing, and if it saves you money and still finds the flaws, that's great. Keep in mind, there's still inherent risks to doing that. Not that there's not risks of testing internally, but when you start talking about externally, some of the things you might want to think about, what are they testing against? Right, if you're going to open yourself up to the bug bounty or, something like that, what are they testing against? Are you letting them test against production data? Because remember, you don't know who's out there actually testing. If it's through a company, are they verifying who the people are that are signing up on their site, or can anybody sign up? Your internal QA testers don't test against production. There's no reason for the external testers to test against anything but like a UAT or a QA environment that they can get to, right? Dummy data, not production data, that type of stuff. So that way, hey, look, we can find stuff, we can bang away, but we don't have to worry about, hey, did we just get breached? Because that's the other thing. How do you handle it? How do you know? Do you know all the IP addresses that these people are coming from to help test your site for you? What if they test from home? What if they're all over the world? What if they could just sign up, on some site anonymously and then just start testing at your site? Do you know where they're coming from, what times they're testing, the type of tests they're doing? Because we've seen it before, right? Tests go bad. Somebody tests something, Apple Developer Network. Somebody was testing that for a bug bounty, and it went down for like a month. They took it offline, right? And there was incident response. There was, a lot of heads rolling of wondering, hey, what the heck's going on? We just got hacked, blah, blah, blah. And then, oh, no, I was just doing research. You got a bug out there, no big deal, right? From a company perspective, How do you handle that? Because what if it actually was a breach and somebody just came out and said, no, that was me. I was just doing research. And you overlook it and say, oh, well, it was just somebody doing research. No big deal. Let's refire up stuff. We'll fix the bug and we're good to go. And in reality, it was somebody actually maliciously attacking your site, stealing all your information, and then claiming that, oh, no, don't worry. It was all innocent. It was my bad. I was just testing your stuff. So you want to make sure, and we'll do a whole nother episode on bug bounties. But if you're talking about crowdsourcing your stuff, think about where are they testing? How are you handling it, right? What is the scope of what they're testing? All that stuff has to come into play. How are you going to handle if testing goes bad, the type of error messages that come through? We need to think about this stuff. And like I said, there are companies out there that, have formed full companies around this idea of, hey, we'll run this thing, we'll work with you to set up your, and I hate the term bug bounty, but we'll work with you to set up this program for you and we'll get it going. Look, it's fine. Again, security testing is no different than QA testing. It's QA. There's no special name for it. We want a special name because, well, I got to feel special. You're a QA tester, and that's fine. We need that. We need QA testers that have the knowledge to be able to do security. The problem is, just like in development and in any other part of the development process, right? We've got developers, we've got people that understand security. We got QA, now we're getting QA that understands security. And really what we need to do is we just need to make QA understand security. So that way we don't have two separate groups. Because now I've got a group of people that know security testing but don't know how to test for anything else. I've got a group of people that can test for everything else but not security testing. As a company, let's grow our QA departments. Let's make sure that our people are getting the training that they need, that they can start testing for this information. We need to find these vulnerabilities because remember, we call them vulnerabilities. They're bugs. They're bugs in the system. The system is not working in the way in which we expected it to work. We need to start testing for that stuff. And guys, it's not that hard. It's not that hard. QA can do this. We can start building this stuff up. We just need to start working more at it. So that's my daily rant as far as talking about testing. I could probably go on for longer, but I've already been on for 22 minutes. So I don't want to waste everybody's time. But please, I've got, I think getting security testing into the QA world and trying to get everything into one umbrella is a way we want to go. The more we can do at that point, the better. The last thing I need is to be finding bugs in production, right? We all know cheaper to find bugs earlier on than later on. So crowdsourcing to have people test your production sites seems a little late to me. So keep that in mind and let's help kind of try to drive this forward. This will be an ongoing topic we talk about is testing because we have to understand and we have to be able to test our applications to help protect them. So that's it for today. Wraps up DevelopSec 15, and then we'll be back again later for the next episode. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I really appreciate it. If you have any comments or feedback, please send them to me. You can send them to podcast@developsec.com, and I'll get those. You have been listening to the DevelopSec podcast with James Jardine. Follow us on Twitter @DevelopSec and visit our website at www.developsec.com for more episodes and information.